Привет, друзья! G'day guys, welcome to another Soviet lens review. Today we're going to be taking a look at a lens that can fit in your pocket. It is, of course, the Industar-50-2. Let's get into it. Okay, so first up, a little bit of history about the lens, of course. Now, the Industar-50-2 was the most produced pancake lens for full-frame cameras in the entire world, with millions of copies produced since its introduction and first serial production in 1953. Now, that was also the year when it was actually laid down on paper and designed by a Soviet optical engineer by the name of Mikhail Dmitrovich Maltsev. Although he didn't start with a blank slate to work off. The Industar-50-2 was actually based on the Industar-50-2, which came before it, also a 50mm f3.5 lens, which was also based on another lens that came before it, the FED 50mm f3.5 lens for the FED rangefinder camera. And that lens, in fact the FED, was a Soviet copy of the Leica Elmar 50mm 3.5, which was of course the Carl Zeiss Jena Tessar design. And all of those lenses and the Industar-50-2 share the same 4-element in 3 group design characteristic of all Carl Zeiss Jena Tessars from that time. So really, when you think about it, the Industar-50-2 is a modern version of a pre-war Leica Elmar from the 1930s. Just goes to show really how well that lens design has held up over time. Now, this copy here was made at the KMZ plant, Krasnogorsk Mechanichesky Zavod, just near Moscow, which of course, as per usual, you can tell with the KMZ marking on the lens. There were a few other Industars made around Litkoreno, Elzos plant, and also Kazan at KOMZ, but they tended to be the slightly earlier versions. Most of the Industar-50-2s that you will find come from KMZ. Now onto tech specs of the lens. It's actually not precisely a 50mm lens, it's 52mm, which might not sound like much, but I find it does kind of help you just get that tiny little touch closer to your subject, and it differentiates it a little bit from a standard 50mm in terms of focal length. Now, this lens did come out of the factory with a specification of 38 lines per millimeter in terms of resolution at the center of the frame and 22 lines per millimeter around the corners of the frame, which compared to other Soviet lenses coming out around that time, it's not too far behind them. So even though it is in such a small, tiny, portable package, the Industar-50-2 on paper was very close to the resolving power of some of the best lenses that the Soviet Union produced, and you definitely find that in photos. It does have a 0.65 meter minimum focusing distance, which isn't too bad. Again, you're not going to be using this lens as a bokeh monster. You can still get a little bit of blur, but again, with that 0.65 meter MFD, it becomes a little bit challenging to try anything too macro. Now, it does have an interesting aperture that goes from f3.5 through to f16 and has 7 aperture blades, which produce relatively rounded bokeh. The other interesting kind of specification of the Industar's aperture is that it is a front controlled aperture where you actually control setting the aperture at the front of the lens by turning the very front kind of piece of metal there, which definitely doesn't help its ergonomics, but when you've got a lens that's 70 grams like this, I don't really think that you can complain. Now, in terms of coatings, the back element of the Industar-50-2 is apparently coated, although the front element is not, which definitely kind of makes sense. When you look at it, you don't really see much of a coating in there. And again, we've got to remember this lens was designed in 1953 before coating every element of a lens was necessarily the done thing. It does also have a 320 degree focus ring rotation, which means that in effect you can get very precise focusing with the Industar. And I've got a near pristine copy, and the focusing on it is just perfectly smooth. I love it. It's what you want in a lens. Of course, it's an all metal and glass construction, as just about all Soviet lenses were. And it's just amazing how smoothly a lens that's this size can focus. Now, in terms of aberrations, like loca, axial aberration, chromatic aberration, fringing, the Industar doesn't really have too much. It really controls aberrations well. Now, I will say though, in terms of vignette, the Industar-50-2, it does suffer from vignette if you're after a lens that is perfectly bright across the frame, from wide open through to f16. This is not the lens for you. It does produce a bit of a vignette when you're shooting. Certainly f3.5, f4, it does improve a little bit as you stop it down. Now, flare is also another issue with this lens that I have to say, because at the end of the day, when you point this lens towards any light source, good luck getting a usable photo. Flare is not really a strong point of the Industar, and there are not even too many scenarios where you can use the flare artistically, just because it kind of ruins the entire image. But aside from that, the barrel construction does have a very handy kind of focus distance and focus scale printed there on the barrel, so you can see exactly what is going to be in focus when you set your lens to a specific aperture and a specific distance of focus, which is just a fantastic feature. I use it quite a lot when I just want to know for sure, that my infinity will be in focus if I'm, say, focusing out to 20 meters. The big, I think, draw card for the Industar-50-2 is how sharp this lens is. Now, it is extremely sharp for a lens of this size and can produce extremely sharp images, particularly in the center of the frame. Now, from f3.5, the center is extremely sharp, but the corners aren't. You do need to stop it down to 5.8, maybe even f8 to get really sharp corners. And as you can see here, the sharpest the Industar gets is at f11. So that's really where you should be shooting if you're trying to get some sort of a landscape with the Industar for maximum sharpness. By f16 though, it does decrease due to the effects of diffraction. But yeah, aside from that, I mean, this lens produces really nice colors. Again, you can put it on a modern camera, you can take photos and put them on Instagram, and they're not going to look like photos taken from a lens that had its original design hark back to 1930. It really is an impressive lens. So I personally really like the colors that come from it. The bokeh as well that comes from the Industar is not bad at all. If you're shooting it at f3.5, you can get very smooth out of focus areas with this lens. Although again, I think it's not the 50mm that I go to if I'm looking for maximum bokeh. I'd choose something like the Zenitar ME1 or of course Helios 44 or Helios 77 for a real bokeh monster Soviet 50mm lens. And yeah, the only other thing worth mentioning is that in video, the Industar, it doesn't really shine, I would say, because it's so hard to, number one, find a filter that actually goes on it. It is around about a 42mm front filter thread, which makes it hard to find ND filters, of course. I did end up trying to take a few long exposures with the Industar, where I actually just draped some ND filters over the top of the barrel. And the barrel is so small that yeah, it kind of worked, and I managed to get some really nice long exposure pics with it. But yeah, I think the most important thing about the Industar, and why I think I would recommend everyone honestly should own one, is just because it's fun to shoot with and it's cheap. You can pick up a lens of this quality, pristine quality, on eBay for $30 thereabouts, $30 US, and it is going to be a fantastic lens that, if you treat it right, will last you for years and years and years. Again, my copy here, I think it was produced, yeah, there we go. So the serial number starts with 83, so that's how I know it was produced in 1983. and it still feels like a lens that, you know, came out of the factory yesterday. It feels absolutely fantastic, and was in pristine condition when I got it. But yeah, it's just a joy to shoot. So there we go. That is the Industar-50-2. I really recommend everyone to pick one up. If you do not own it already, they can be converted to adapt to just about any modern camera out there, mirrorless or not. So really just head on to eBay and get yourself one. They are really fun to shoot. Anyways, guys, that is it for today's Soviet lens review. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a like, leave us a comment, and subscribe for more Soviet lens reviews. I'll see you in the next one.